For the best prices and service on Pokemon TCG singles and products, check out ccgcastle.com and use promo code Evolutionaries-5 for 5% off your next order.
What's up, guys? And here, and for today's Deck Tech Thursday, I'm going to be profiling for you guys my Zoroark BREAK deck. That is right, the time has come for the rematch, Greninja v Zoroark. And both our decks have changed quite a bit since the last time they fought against each other. And with the new stuff we've gotten from the Sun and Moon sets, that's the way the meta has been changing, Zoroark is once again considered one of the meta decks, which makes me incredibly happy. Now, though, the most popular one is Drampa. This is not the Drampa version, though, however, this one still does very, very well, and I personally feel it's better than Drampa. So, let's get right into it. First off here, we got 4 copies of Zora, 4 copies of Zoroark, and 3 copies of Zoroark BREAK. Now I'm going to explain each one of these guys here. It really doesn't matter which Zora you pick to run. I just like the Moonless Madness one because, dude, in case you get into a bad situation, you can at least confuse your opponent's Pokemon and hope to last a turn or 2 extra. But, like I said, at the end, it really, really doesn't matter. So you could go with that one and go with the little bow tie Zoroark. Doesn't matter. Now, Zoroark here. The good old Zoroark from Breakthrough, which some people think we're going to lose Breakthrough. However, I find that incredibly unlikely, so there's a very good chance that Zoroark is going to stay for quite some time. And even Professor K agrees with me on that, so there you guys go. If you don't believe me, believe the Professor. So it's got an attack and an ability. The ability Standard lets you switch your active Pokemon with Zoroark there, so a good way to get out of special conditions or just to get an unfavorable Pokemon, like say Lele, out of the active if you so happen to start with it. At least you have ways around it. And it's got the attack Mind Jack, an amazing attack, honestly. It does 10 damage and it does 30 more for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So for a single double colors, you can do up to 160 with a full bench of 5. And that's not even including Skyfield and all that. Not to mention, with all the stuff that's been released from Sun and Moon sets, there are so many more ways to boost up this damage now more than ever. And you don't even need a full bench to one-shot Pokemon. And last but certainly not least, we got Zoroark BREAK. Now this card right here is actually why this became such an efficient counter against the Trashalanche Garbodor. Because it has the attack Foul Play to where it can copy one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks without needing the energy requirements. So against the Garbodor matchup, they would just copy their Trashalanche. Because usually, unless it's the mirror match, they don't really worry about having their items in the discard. So you use that against them. And not to mention you had more HP than the Garbodor. Not to mention psychic resistance. So they need you to have a lot more items in your discard than items in their discard for the knockouts. So yeah, that's how the counter came to be. Was actually this card right here. And now Zoroark's played just about everywhere again. Like I said, I love it. Alright, now let's take a look at some of his friends here. We have 2 copies of Tapu Lele, basically new Shaman. You bench it, you search your deck for a supporter card, put it into your hand. So just like Jirachi we had back in the day, but it's got a lot more HP and you can use its attack, Energy Drive. It's the same thing as X-Ball or Arrow Ball for 20 damage times the amount of energy on both Lele and your opponent's active, but it's not affected by weakness, which sucks. But at the same time, resistance is also not applied. So against like dark Pokemon, metal Pokemon, stuff like that, you don't have to worry about the resistance with that, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool indeed. Next up here, we run 2 copies of Tapu Koko. Now this is probably the best Pokemon to start with right here, because it's got free retreat, decent HP at 110, and it's got the attack Flying Flip. For a double colorless, you do 20 to all of your opponent's Pokemon, active and bench, which makes knocking stuff out with Zoroark that much easier. Alright, now let's take a look at one of his friends. So we have 1 Oricorio, 1 Oranguru, and 1 Vulpix. The Vulpix is just to use the free attack beacon, search your deck for up to 2 Pokemon, and put them into your hand. Now you see Vulpix a lot in Stage 2 decks, but since we're dealing with a break deck here, it's essentially Stage 2. So that's why I've got the Vulpix in there. The Oranguru is just to draw a little bit more from turn to turn, because I find at least a little more than half the time my hands are pretty small with this deck. And the Oranguru hasn't really hurt me since then. Plus, if you really have to, you can use the attack Psychic. So, at least you can attack with it, though you really would not want to. And last but not least, we have Oricorio. Now, you may use Oricorio for Supernatural Dance. For each Pokemon in your opponent's discard pile, you put a damage counter on your opponent's Pokemon any way you want. So, amazing against the Vespiquen matchup, but pretty good against basically everything else too. Because it does what Coco does, it puts damage counters everywhere, makes them that much easier for Zoroark to one-shot. Because, as any Zoroark player can relate to, they usually just get so short of a one-hit KO with the attacks. And Pokemon like this just help push along that KO. And that's going to be it for the Pokemon. All of his little buddies have been shown off. And now we're going to look into our supporters. We have 3 copies of Professor Sycamore, 2 copies of N, and 1 copy of Lily. Now, only 3 Sycamore now because we have Lele. Same thing with why the Lily is in here. Just to be able to draw up to 8 on your first turn, which I love doing that combo so much. Next up here we have 2 copies of Lysander. Now this card is going to get rotated out come after Worlds, unless it gets another promo reprint somehow, but that's okay, because we're getting your boy Guzma, which I personally think Guzma is so much better than Lysander. For those of you who know what Guzma does, it's Lysander also and an escape rope for yourself. So it's amazing card. Alright, next up for supporters here, I run 1 copy of Bridget. Now Bridget's just to help fill up your bench with Pokemon you might need at the time. But it's not like a stage 2 deck where you have to get the Bridget off turn 1. Sure, it'd be nice to fill up your bench a little bit here, but most of the time if you can help it, drawing's always better. Alright, and we have 3 more supporters here. We have 1 copy of Skyla, 1 copy of Hexmaniac, and 1 copy of Professor Kukui. Hexmaniac, self-explanatory to just shut down bothersome abilities. Skyla, just to search your deck for any trainer you might need. Once again, we have Lele, the bench and search this card now. And Professor Kukui. One of the ways I told you about that we have to boost our damage even more. Draw 2 cards and your opponent's Pokemon, wow, that'd be dumb if your opponent could do it. If your Pokemon do 20 more damage. So that 160 base turns into 180 base. Without any tools or stadiums boosting that damage whatsoever, 180. And we do run tools and stadiums to boost up the damage even more, so the attacks can go for way more than 180. And that's it for the supporters, nothing too fancy. Now we go into our items. Got 4 copies of Ultra Ball, 4 copies of the S-Seeker. These 2 are probably just the most self-explanatory ones I could think of. Ultra Ball, search for Pokemon. Via Seeker, get a supporter back from discard, which this we are going to be losing unless we get a reprint, which this I think is going to change the metagame quite a bit, losing this. And I'm pretty curious how that's going to go. Alright, next up here for tools, we run 3 copies of Choice Band. Now this is another way to boost up damage even more. You do 30 more damage to your opponent's EX and GX Pokemon. So let's say even without the Kukui there, that's 190 you're doing to an EX or GX. With Kukui, that's 210. It's knocking out basically any basic you could think of that's not Whale Lord. So yeah, whew, crazy. And it doesn't even have to be Mind Jack either. It can be Foul Play using one of their attacks, so you don't even have to really rely on your opponent's bench. So it makes it so busted. Alright, next up here, run 2 copies of Floatstone to attach to our Zoroark at times where we need to stand in and retreat free. But most of the time, you just want the Choice Bands on. Though depending on the matchup, the Floatstone would be better. And next up, I run 2 copies of Rescue Stretcher. Now this is honestly a really good card. You can choose to either put a Pokemon from your discard into your hand, or you shuffle 3 Pokemon from discard into your deck. So you can choose, like I said, you can choose one of those, and this card just comes in clutch so many times. Alright, lastly you have is going to be 1 Special Charge and 1 Field Blower. Field Blower just to get rid of tools and stadiums. Special Charge, since double colorless is so important in this deck, we run that to get it back. And that's it for the items. Next up, and gonna leave it for last is going to be our stadiums and energy. So for stadiums, we run 2 copies of Reverse Valley, 1 copy of Parallel City. Forgive me. The Reverse Valley is just to boost our damage by 10 more, so that maximum 210 with Zoroark's Mind Jack just now turned to 220. Completely unnecessary, but we do it anyway. And Parallel City, which may sound weird because Mind Jack's gonna be your biggest hitter. You don't really use it to limit your opponent's bench, you just use it to limit yours. And since it reduces damage from fire, water, and grass, which are all pretty popular types, helps out with that too. And now for our energy, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 basic dark energy, and 4 double colorless energy. And with that, that's everything. That is the Zoroark Break and Friends deck profile. Now stick around tomorrow for when I do my legendary rematch against Professor K's Greninja deck. Yeah, last time we did this, I did not win, but Zoroark has gotten a lot stronger since then, and who knows, maybe I could get another win here. Or maybe not. You never know, you're just gonna have to wait till tomorrow to find out. So, if you like this video, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you're new to the channel. And thank you for watching, guys. Really appreciate it. This has been N with the Pokemon Evolutionaries, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow.